Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream. We have today scheduled for the top of the hour Donald Trump's press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, who will be briefing us, briefing the press, briefing America with lies, as we have seen many times before. And we will see how cartoonish they are. Scheduled for 16 minutes from now. Could be an hour from now. We don't know. She's often very, very late. But that's okay because we have so many things to discuss here in the United States. First, globally update on coronavirus numbers. We're approaching 6 million official cases. We are close to 360,000 deaths. We continue to see, looking at yesterday's numbers, Brazil challenging the United States for the most new cases per day. Yesterday, Brazil actually with more new cases than the United States, deaths lagging behind. We still have 1,500 deaths a day here in the U.S., but Brazil, look at this curve. As you can see, not looking good in Brazil at all. And there are now discussions about resignation being demanded from their president, Jair Bolsonaro. It's a mess there. Russia also not doing particularly well, as you can see, but they have actually maybe turned the corner, if you can believe this data, although deaths continue to increase. Typically, that's a lagging indicator. And then India also continuing to struggle. Let's see, their curve continuing to grow, deaths continuing to grow. So here in the United States, we are past 1.75 million official cases. The real number, of course, who knows how big it is. 102, almost 103,000 deaths. Remember, Donald Trump said we would have 60,000 deaths. We're now at 102, and he's still calling this a success. Fortunately, the one good bit of data is that some states are really doing okay. I mean, I'm pleased with what's happening in Massachusetts. Obviously, the numbers are horrifying in the aggregate, but when you look at the trajectory, this is what you want to see. When you look at the trajectory of deaths, that's the direction you want things to go in. Now, I'm going to show you a number now that is a sick, disgusting, embarrassing number. I'm going to show you the number of tests the United States did yesterday. And, you know, we've been trying to go from 100,000 a day to 2 to 3 to 4 to 500,000 a day. Today, I interviewed Congressman Ro Khanna, friend of the David Pakman Show. That interview will air later today. Make sure you're getting my audio podcast to get that right away when it publishes in about an hour and 45 minutes. He believes we need to be doing, you know, certainly 5 million tests a week. Look at how many tests we did yesterday. 285,000 tests. We went back yesterday to the testing level of March 10th. Before yesterday, you have to go to May 10th, not March 10th. You have to go back to May 10th to find a day on which we did as few tests as yesterday. Excuse me. We can't even get to 500,000, and we need to be at 2 million a day. It is absolutely and completely disgusting. We just can't get it together. And, you know, Trump likes to say, in some places, there's too many tests. No one's showing up. You need to do surveillance testing. You need to start saying, hey, if it's true that we have this testing capacity, if you're over 65, just come get a test. If you if your last name starts with A through D, you can get tested on Monday regardless of symptoms. E through G. Well, we need to be doing surveillance testing. We are nowhere near where we need to be. Okay, one other thing. Let me just see how we're doing in terms of if anything has gone live here. Not quite yet. Okay, one other thing. And actually, let me do a couple of super chats because I see that I've fallen behind on them already. And then I will get back to something else I want to talk about out of New York. Let's see. Ben Busink says, what total percentage of Trump's waking hours consist of makeup, spray tan, tanning bed, hairpiece maintenance, cable TV, Twitter, golf, good Trumpist alpha male? I mean, from reports that I've seen on weekdays, Trump is watching 5 to 7 hours of cable TV. You know, add a couple more hours to that. It's probably, you know, 80% of the day that he's awake for. Walker Anderson says, why do protesters automatically assume police racism? You'd have to ask them. Kevin McComber says college shouldn't be free, but much cheaper. Most degrees won't get you a well-paying job and you would be better off working. What are your thoughts? Yeah, well, so the problem is that the cost of a college degree has gone completely out of sync with expected earnings in many fields. And so that's a huge problem. It's a wages problem, but it's mostly a college cost problem. And that is something that we absolutely need to be considering. Walker Anderson says police brutality isn't racism by default, right? No, you can have police brutality that does not involve racism. That's true. Walker Anderson says, just curious on your opinion. I respect you. All right, well, I just gave it to you. Azim Abu Khalil says, congratulations on surpassing Secular Talk subscriber count. I didn't know that. 1 million is at hand. The more people listening to you, the better. Hope you're well. Yeah, I don't know how other channels are doing subscriber-wise. I know we have had a huge surge, very powerful surge recently. We are at 844,000. If enough of you subscribe, we could get to 845 during the stream, actually. I'm sort of focused on our own numbers. I would love to be at 1 million subscribers by November. It's going to be very tight. It's going to be very, very tight. Drew Goldfarb says, David, you should add an on-screen lie counter. Yeah, I think it would just be going off the hook like a slot machine, but it is a good idea. Sabrina Safar says, no haircut yet. No haircut yet. You know, I usually get my haircut outside of my home area. There's a particular place that I go. So I'm going to have to probably wait a little bit, but maybe within a week or 10 days or something like that, I will get myself a haircut. Okay, let's take a look at a recent report from Forbes. Cuomo will let New York businesses deny customers without masks. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said in a Thursday press conference he will sign an executive order allowing businesses to deny customers who are not wearing masks, contrasting with businesses across the country that have said the exact opposite and will not serve customers who are wearing the protective gear. Can you imagine something more dumb? Cuomo says, you don't want to wear a mask, fine, then you don't have a right to enter that store. So I'm actually confused about this because my understanding of the law, and if there's something in New York State that is different than this, I want to hear about it. My understanding is businesses can deny service to whoever they want to deny service to, as long as the denial is not based on the customer's membership in a protected class. So, for example, if you want to say no black people allowed, no Jews allowed in my business, that would be against the law because we have established non-discrimination laws as far as that goes. In some states, you are not allowed to say, if you're gay, you're not allowed to come into my business, although that is allowed in some states. This is America, and that's still allowed in some states. So I don't actually know why you would even need this executive order because political orientation is not a protected class. If you want to say no Trumpists allowed in my store, if you had a way to figure that out, that would be allowed. I believe Washington, D.C. considers political orientation protected, but I believe other states do not. Along the same lines, if you say, I don't want people not wearing a shirt in my store, certainly we're all familiar with the no shirt, no shoes, no service signs. So I don't know why Cuomo even needs to say anything that says if a store wants to say no mask, no service, I don't know why you need an executive order for that. Now, there are situations where something can be a proxy to a protected class. So let me give you a hypothetical. Imagine that only black people were wearing masks and you banned masks as a proxy to banning black people. Okay, now we have something to talk about. But again, my understanding of the law is that there is nothing that would prevent a business from refusing service to someone on the basis of not wearing a mask, much the same way that a business can say, if you're not wearing shoes, you're not allowed in my store. If you're not wearing a shirt, you're not allowed in my store. So I'm a bit confused about that, but maybe we can get a legal explanation that makes a little more sense at some point soon. For those of you who joined me yesterday, we attempted to go live with the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket pushing or delivering the Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station. That launch was scrubbed due to weather. The next launch window is Saturday. It's either 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time, and I do plan to be back, which is going to be, we should have a fantastic stream. Let me say a few thank yous to folks who are watching on Twitch and doing the extremely kind thing of subscribing. Gearbox42 has subscribed with Twitch Prime, and Tanman6889 has subscribed for the 10th month in a row. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that support. Other super chats continuing to come in. Captain Aiko says, where's the man bun? So I agreed to do a man bun yesterday during my stream, and I did it, and it was pretty stunning. A lot of people were surprised. A few kids will need therapy, unfortunately, because they saw my man bun, but most people just enjoyed it. But I did not promise it a second time. Alex Kepke says, David, what is the status of Operation Airbridge? Yeah, I believe that they have 7,200 flights scheduled. Operation Airbridge now has 7,200 scheduled flights. Kevin McComber says, what are your thoughts on Trump talking big tech censorship? Yeah, the most transparent free speech advocate president in history wants to regulate and censor what private companies will be forced to allow on their platform. Can you imagine a more triggerable snowflake than Donald Trump? It is unbelievable. Thank you to Mr. Hillsman and Nikki, who have subscribed with Twitch Prime as a hype train gets going. Some people refer to it by a different term. It's an ugly term, very, very ugly term, but we call it a hype train. Boogerface says, on the executive order, maybe because of the Karens, no offense to anyone named Karen. I don't know what you were talking about. I don't know what you were talking about. And let me see if I can actually find the full text of the executive order. I'm not actually finding that yet. I don't know if it's been revealed yet or not, but we will certainly be covering it. JR says, David, you are the Lord and soul of reason, rationalization, good reason, and logic. Redundant, I realize. On all your full shows, you are my go-to for accuracy and sane and proper perspective. Thank you. I am undeserving of that degree of praise. Ron says, why does Bernie not get criticism for voting for the crime bill the way Biden does? That's a fair question. I don't know the answer. I interviewed Ro Khanna today. And he was a Bernie Sanders co-chair, and he said, this is the hot take from Ro Khanna, and we're publishing this a little bit later today. Ro Khanna said, it is privileged for Bernie supporters to say, let's let Trump win because it might help progressives at some point in the future. That's not my words. I've never said that. Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders co-chair and progressive darling of the House of Representatives, said to me today, is it an act of privilege to say, let's give Trump another 4 years because we think it might be advantageous in 2024. We will be publishing that later today. I expect a lot of wackiness and craziness in response. Let's see here. Maeve Jack says, did you see the lady stabbing looters outside Target? I did not. I did not see that, and I don't know that I want to pull it up right now. I don't know what is and isn't allowed on various stream elements, so I'm going to wait on that. Sam Dean says, "G'day, David, ready for another round of nonsense?" We are indeed. Matt Chavez says, Trump expediting Floyd investigation is merely an attempt to steal votes. Granted, it's a good thing, but the reason to act on a national story is clear. Of course, of course. Listen, if you want to see how someone behaves when they actually understand the issue of racial discrimination by law enforcement, look at what Joe Biden said today. Joe Biden is no perfect candidate. I'm way to his left. Blah, 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 blah. You all know the talking points. Insert talking points and disclaimers here. But Joe Biden came out and immediately said, listen, this is not an isolated incident. And while the isolated incident needs to be dealt with, this is emblematic of something that has been a problem in the United States for a long time. Unless and until we deal with the root causes and the systemic causes, we're not really going to stop this type of thing from happening. And that's the kind of statement I would like to see from a president. We're not going to get that from Donald Trump, certainly. Ever. Thanks to Frisco Jones and Norvey for the support over on Twitch. Thank you to Annie Sepikoff for subscribing on YouTube. Also, Sergeant Leska says, hi from Australia. We appreciate your efforts, David. Keep up the good work, soldier. Salutes. Thank you, Sergeant. Very, very much appreciate that. Good to hear from you. A couple of other things. Oh, I've got some Sean Hannity video. Check out Sean Hannity having 2 clips where he actually makes some sense. Here's Hannity saying, why the hell aren't these partiers wearing masks?
Lake of the Ozarks, packed with partygoers this holiday weekend. Look, I understand these are young people. Experts keep saying over and over, they're at a much lower risk. But if they do get this, and again, there's no mask wearing here that I see, or not much at all. I see no social distancing. But if they get the virus and then are in contact with older and more vulnerable Americans, that could be a disaster for others. That's why in a short period of time, it's only temporary.
Yep.
You can't social distance. Please wear the mask. Do it for your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa.
Sean Hannity making a little bit of sense despite being overall a weaponized propagandist. Here is also Sean Hannity commenting on the George Floyd situation. Always, any opportunity Hannity gets to talk about his martial arts training for the last 7 years, he does it. But he's still saying some things that make sense here. Take a look.
And again, this is not trial by videotape here. That has nothing to do with it. This guy's not resisting on any video we see. You hear him clearly saying, I can't breathe.
Right.
I have to imagine, and I talked to my martial arts sensei.
There it is, his sensei.
Trains police officers for free. He says it is scary to him how, for most officers, a lot of officers, their only option is what's on their sidearm. That's it, or a stun gun. They're not trained in the use of martial arts. But even a rudimentary training would say, you would know how sensitive this is to one's neck.
Yes.
Sean, this is...
So
and again, this is not...
Shocking. This is so... The way I would say it is, not Hannity is a good guy now. I would say, this is so egregious that even weaponized propagandist Sean Hannity can't reasonably get away with anything other than that commentary. That's where we are right now. And, broken clocks can be right once a day or twice a day, depending on whether it's a, 24-hour clock or... Anyway, you guys get the point. It is what it is. I'm seeing people saying even Rush Limbaugh wasn't defending the cops. That's crazy. If that's true, that's crazy. I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay. Zachary Brayland says Donald Trump retweeted a video saying the only good Democrat is a dead Democrat. Saw it. Toxic. Big SOS Man says Jesse Lee Peterson is your intellectual superior. Great. Go watch his channel. I don't know why you're here if you believe that to be the case. It looks as though the Kayleigh McEnany briefing has been now rescheduled for the bottom of the hour. Can anybody get me a tweet or confirmation of that if that is the case? Anybody know? Would love to know a little bit about that myself. Anybody? Where could we see that? We don't know. Did anybody tweet about it? Maybe. In the meantime, I'm going to kick on the AC here because it is very, very warm. I'm going to add some elements of cooling if you guys don't mind. There we go. What temperature do you guys think I should set? I love 72. That's typically my favorite temperature. There we go. All right, 72 it is. Very, very good. Okay. It seems as though maybe this has been rescheduled for the bottom of the hour, but we will be here chatting and discussing things until that time. Thank you. Okay, let me say thank you to Ben Busink. Ben Busink has grabbed a membership at joinpacman.com, the top website for David Pakman Show memberships. Thank you to Ben. Very much appreciate that. Let's see. Bernie Sanders says we need someone on the left to debate Steven Crowder. Okay. Let's see. Ale Bale says, did you see the Swiss curve? Such a beautiful curve, the best curve. Let's take a look at that. I want to see what's going on in Switzerland. Where is Switzerland here? Switzerland, here it is. Let's take a look at what's going on in Switzerland. 30,000 cases, about 2,000 deaths. Wow, that is amazing, actually. That is incredible. Good for Switzerland. I've not been following Switzerland closely, but that is unbelievable. As few as, oh, that's current infections. Let's see. In recent days, wow, 10 new, can you imagine 10 new cases? Like in Massachusetts and other states, we regularly have 10 new cases just like in one nursing home. never mind in the entire state or country. It's unbelievable. That's worldometers.info, worldometers.info, for people who are asking about that. That is really, really incredible. Okay, a couple of other things that I wanted to play for you guys. Let me find them over here. I bookmarked a bunch of different things. Oh, okay. So listen, I don't know if this is going to be interesting to people, but one of the things I'm going to do on tomorrow's program is I'm going to do a segment about what would be the left-wing case against lockdowns. Now, it's going to be, this is a thought experiment. The question is going to be, is there a left perspective that would be sensibly skeptical of a full extended lockdown? I believe the answer is yes, and I'm going to, debunk all of the bad right-wing arguments against lockdowns. And essentially what I will propose tomorrow is the left comes to the defense of, understands that the most vulnerable people in our society are the working poor, lower middle class, blue collar, people who have relatively low levels of market power, who are relatively easily replaced in their jobs, and older folks, etc. So what I am going to sort of think about or ponder tomorrow is, could there have been a path where we actually properly protected older folks? Remember, in Massachusetts, at one point, 60% of the deaths were in nursing homes. We just failed to protect nursing homes while keeping more businesses open with social distancing, with masks, etc. Could we not have saved economic destruction for the most vulnerable economically while still protecting the vulnerable and limiting the economic damage? So tomorrow the point is, I'm going to steel man a possible left-wing argument against total extended lockdowns without advocating for them. But I think it's going to generate some interesting conversation. And I'm always glad to hear from folks in the audience, their thoughts on that sort of thing. Let's see here. Incredibo TV says, wow, even Hannity is being a good faith actor on George Floyd. Get Candace Owens on the phone and tell her she can stop making a fool of herself. So Candace Owens blocked me on Twitter a while ago, so I don't know what she does, but someone sent me one of her clips recently. I had no idea that she was spreading such violent disinformation about the virus. I just had no idea whatsoever. And she is, and it's extremely dangerous, very, very dangerous. Let's refresh here because it seems that the White House channel has now gone live. I'll just turn up the audio here so that we hear it right away. Eduardo Lino Costa has grabbed a YouTube membership. Matt Chavez says, here in Arizona, my air conditioning is set to 84 degrees. It's chilly. Huh, okay. Sam Dean says, any thoughts on how Space Force is actually using the Starfleet insignia from Star Trek? I mean, what kind of man-child does that? It's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it's all so painfully stupid that I've not even really done a lot of discussion about it. It's just all so dumb. And it's a kid. It's just, this is what happens when you have someone with the intellectual capacity of a child as president. It's a cool Space Force. Let's get the Star Trek logo. It's just dumb. It's extraordinarily dumb. Let me say thanks to Taynet64 and Ringo Star 34 for the support over on Twitch. Very, very much appreciate that. We are standing by for a press briefing from Donald Trump's propaganda press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany. She calls herself a Christian, and yet she lies constantly. I don't know how that is aligned with her so-called Christian beliefs. She would probably say, well, there's some, greater good that she's serving by lying for Donald Trump, or maybe she's convinced herself she's not lying, but I believe she's smart enough to know she is lying, and she just justifies it. Let me say thank you to Jason Rouse. Jason is new member number 2 today at joinpacman.com. Very much appreciate that. Thanks, Jason. Boogerface says, you'll have to look up a number or two sometime. Example, Karen's Gone Wild. I know you'll get it once you see it. Okay. Geez, I wish I knew what was being said there. I'm confused. Alex Novason says, will they be including the cast of the Weekend at Bernie's movie for the potential 2020 feature film Weekend at Biden's? Yes, absolutely. Maeve Jack says, what's a protest and when does it become a riot? Yeah, I actually tweeted that today. Let's look at what people answered me. What is the line between protesting and rioting? Let's see what people say. I'm a black woman. Police killed unarmed black people has been going on a long time. Protesting does nothing. Rioting makes people pay attention. Oh, so a pro-rioter. I have no idea if that Martin Luther King quote is accurate. If you feel the need to bring guns, then it's a riot. Rioting is wanton destruction of third-party property and possessions, as well as unstructured physical violence, not complicated. I see a lot of really sheltered folks here lionizing riots. You've never been exposed to them probably, plus you're white. I think they mean you apostrophe R-E white. I don't know if they're talking about me, but setting things on fire is not what protesters do. You don't. Rioting is a form of protest. Wow. You don't. The mourning and protest that is so damn tired in this country, that clearly hasn't changed anything thus far, is not anyone's to judge. I don't know. I'm having trouble parsing the grammar. When that protest shifts into anger, we need to focus on and address the cause and not the outcome. Oh, boy. Rioting and looting are absolutely part of protesting. Not always, but there is a long history of violence being used when nonviolence doesn't work. This will be one of those Pac-Man right-wing takes, I'm sure. I don't know what this person's talking about. Violence is the line. You don't fix George's death with more death and destruction. Be better than that. Assault, theft, arson. Property damage seems like an obvious red line. With charcoal? Okay. Not that I haven't got sympathy for those enraged to the point of rioting, but I think a protest only inconveniences, as long as it's going on, doesn't leave permanent damage in its wake. Even if you think violence is the only answer, go against government buildings, go against the police. The moment you go looting, you hurt your own people more than these 4 cops ever could. Man, I'm having a lot of trouble understanding some of these. The line isn't even gray, it's night and day. Protests are fine, even encouraged. Rioting, looting, and assaulting innocent cops who had nothing to do with this is juvenile. I think most people involved are ignorant and don't actually care about the murder of George Floyd. Someone says innocent cops. Wow, real smart. All right, so there's I guess, an idea anyway of where some people are drawing the line between protesting and rioting. Let's do a couple of other super chats. Let's see here. The 1JP says, did you see the video of the woman in the wheelchair trying to stop the Target rioters? Thoughts on the altercation? I haven't seen that. Listen, I don't need a lot of people to do this. We've been so busy with the show the last 24 hours. Can someone email me through my website the wheelchair lady video? I've not seen that. Some kind of Target stabbing that people, I know I sound like I'm totally out of it. I've just been so busy. I have not seen these yet. Any of these relevant videos related to what happened in Minnesota, please email me. I want to see the Target wheelchair lady. I want to see the stabbing thing, and anything else you think I should see. davidpacman.com. There's a contact form. I don't want to pull this stuff up sight unseen on the stream because it could be problematic. I don't know what's, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. There's different rules, and we don't want to have a problem right now. Bartek Nowakowski says, what does Joe Rogan's studio smell like? Weed and whey protein, I imagine. There was no notable smell when I walked in. I couldn't identify any particular smell. X says, any way to do a live commentary of Don Jr.'s Instagram feed later? It's intellectual and bigly with elements of humor. Maybe later. Maybe later we would do something like that. JR says, to the never Biden progressives, there is no moral high ground in allowing Trump to get reelected. Well, that's the argument that Congressman Ro Khanna made on my program today, and we'll be posting that video later. I think you'll find it interesting, if not compelling. Chris K says, I live in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Protesting is fine. Looting is not cool because it seems to just hurt the same people that you are protesting for. All right. Hiroshi Loves You says, Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. All right. Very, very important and relevant. Do you guys want to see any more of the tweets to me about the difference between protesting and rioting, or are we feeling done with that? Oh, someone's asking if I love black people. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Do we want to see more of those tweets, or are we feeling done? All right, it seems a bunch of people want to see a few more. So let's just take a look at a couple more of these tweets. The question was, what's the difference between a protest and riot? Protests are demonstrations that serve the purpose of dissenting with the status quo. Rioting is a reactionary consequence when these protests fail to bear any fruit. Okay. I believe it rioting when there is no cause. For example, destruction when a football team wins the Super Bowl. This, I believe, is the last resort of a body of people who have had enough. It was even local businesses that were looted. It was Walmart. This was a protest. I guess you mean it wasn't local businesses? Man, I'm just really struggling with some of these. Rioting at the end of the day is the response of continued injustice and social discontent. This rioting is not spontaneous, but a response to continued frustration with police brutality. You know, that's actually interesting to me. I mean, it's a lot of people will say destruction of property is rioting and chants and carrying signs is protesting or something like that. This one is interesting, which is rioting is not spontaneous. When I went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst and the Red Sox lost or the Red Sox won, that didn't really matter. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, here we go. Let's see what's going on.
So I want to start by acknowledging the horrific tragedy in Minnesota of George Floyd. The death of George Floyd is absolutely tragic. That video that we saw, that I saw, that my staff saw, that the president saw. And the president put out a statement last night that at his request, the FBI and the Department of Justice are already well into an investigation as to the very sad and tragic death in Minnesota of George Floyd. Ask for this investigation to be expedited and greatly appreciate all of the work done by law enforcement. My heart goes out to George's family and friends. Justice will be served. I can tell you that as I'm briefing you at this moment, the president is receiving a briefing from the Attorney General, Bill Barr, on this, and the Deputy Director of the FBI. So that is ongoing as I begin this briefing. Secondly, I want to transition into some news from SBA and Treasury that was announced that today the U.S. Small Business Administration, in consultation with the U.S. Treasury Department, announced that it is setting aside $10 billion of round 2 funding for the Paycheck Protection Program to be lent exclusively to CDFIs. Those are community development financial institutions. CDFIs work to expand economic opportunity in low-income communities by providing access to financial products and services for local residents and businesses. So we're encouraged to see that. And then finally, before taking your questions, I wanted to address what has been going on Twitter and with social media.
Oh, boy.
I believe it is time to, quote, get the facts about Twitter and other social media platforms targeting their bias against President Trump and conservatives online. If we were to judge the bias of Twitter and its top employees by their own words, the case would be an easy one to make. Twitter's head of site integrity has tweeted that there are, quote, actual Nazis in the White House, and no fact check label was ever applied to this absolutely outrageous, offensive, and false claim made against the White House and its employees.
Okay.
But let's judge Twitter based on their actions, not based on the words of its top employees, and its actions are no better. President Trump recently received a so-called fact check label for a tweet.
I don't know why
it
it's
was
skipping,
a false fact check and an accurate fact check, but nevertheless, Twitter moved forward with it. Dan Scavino, the deputy chief of staff here, was the first user in the history of Twitter to receive a so-called, quote, manipulated media label for posting a video that played a verbatim clip. It is no coincidence that these two unbelievable interventions by Twitter...
I'm pretty sure that was a slowed down video meant to make, I think it was Nancy Pelosi look stupid. So it was manipulated, despite being verbatim, so to speak.
And while big tech is quick to censor the president, quick to censor some of his top employees, they are very reluctant, it seems, to label some of the actions by Chinese officials, some of the misinformation that has been spread by China. For example, to move off of Twitter and move to Google, they created a search engine for the Chinese Communist Party, which blacklisted searches for human rights and allowed for easy surveillance. Facebook and Twitter have both taken paid advertising that spread disinformation about China's mass imprisonment of religious minorities. And Twitter has allowed Chinese officials to use its platforms to spread misinformation about the coronavirus, undermine the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, and more. And then back in March, a Chinese official began spreading a conspiracy theory on Twitter, an egregious one, that our U.S. military was responsible for the spread of the coronavirus. And that tweet, that disinformation, it took all the way until today when we raised concerns about it to get a fact check. So they appear to be very hastily eager to censor President Trump and some of his employees, but a little reluctant when it comes to China. It's a bit befuddling. But no one believes in the First Amendment more than the president. The president will take action to ensure that big tech does not stifle free speech.
The president will be censoring and controlling Twitter and is the biggest advocate of the First Amendment.
And finally, I just want to note one other action of Twitter that I learned just before walking out here, that on the Mueller report, their anti-Trump headlines were anti-Trump by a ratio of 76-1. That's extraordinary, and it's not just bias aimed at President Trump and his employees. It's also aimed at everyday Americans. It's aimed at the movie Unplanned, as Twitter suspended their account and then came up with an excuse in the aftermath. And then just another example that liberals are allowed to incite violence against the Covington kids who were in the end proven right, and their video was taken out of context, and yet these individuals were allowed by Twitter to incite violence. It's very disturbing to see. So those are some of the president's concerns, and with that, I will take questions.
Here we go.
Jim. That's a very nice tie, Jim, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yesterday, the U.S. hit 100,000 deaths from the coronavirus.
She's got a page for that.
That happened at around 6 o'clock yesterday evening. It took until about 9 in the morning for the president to recognize that on Twitter. What took him so long?
Look, the president recognized that landmark before we even hit it. The president, that was, after all, it was the impetus behind him lowering the flag to half-staff. He did that for several days, and that was an acknowledgement of that.
Trump lowering the flag for 3 days a week ago was an advance acknowledgement of a milestone hit yesterday. Got it.
Some odd hours for him to recognize that and tweet about it.
And far in advance of that benchmark, as I noted, he lowered the flag to half-staff.
Right.
The president has said, you mentioned 100,000, but the president has said one death is too many.
Right.
He takes this very seriously. He said before, this is the hardest part of his presidency. It's something that
Guys, Trump 2 months ago wore a flag pin. That was his recognition.
Fact check, especially this president who has made so many false and misleading statements that it has put, fact checkers to work across the world. I mean, he's uttered some 18,000 false or misleading statements.
He's going to attack the Washington Post.
If there's any president out there who should be fact-checked, any political leader out there should be fact-checked, isn't it President Trump? And aren't you trying to silence fact-checking by going after Twitter like this?
Yes.
Look, well, first I would say I disagree with all, if not almost all, of those assertions that you're making there, because, look, if you're going to get into the fact-checking business, there's no one that should be fact-checked more than the mainstream media that has been continually wrong about a number of things. To give you a list of some of the most egregious ones,
so this is called Look at
that
This Other
ABC
Thing.
News in December of 2017 falsely reported that Flynn would testify that the president directed him during the campaign to make contact with the Russians. That was false. In 2017,
well, he didn't end up testifying.
Email exclusive and were forced to make on-air corrections. CNN's Jem Sciutto, another...
Making corrections is good. Trump never corrects. Trump never apologizes. Trump never takes responsibility.
Tell federal investigators that the president knew of the Trump Tower meeting. And there are many more, not to just put the onus on CNN there. So if anyone needs to be fact-checked, I think
not
it should
an
be
answer,
the media.
Kayleigh.
There are news outlets that make mistakes from time to time. We own up to those mistakes. We correct those
Not
mistakes.
always. I have many you guys haven't owned up to, I could get to.
We do on a regular basis. The president never owns up to any of his
Has
false
never owned up to
or
anything.
misleading statements or outright lies. You have pledged in this briefing room to never lie to the American people. Are you saying that the president of the United States has never lied to the public before?
I'm around the president. His intent is always to give truthful information to the American people. And you mentioned that the media apologizes for their mistruths. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at other headlines in the New York Times saying there aren't enough ventilators to cope with the coronavirus. In fact, we had an excess of ventilators we've shipped around the world. Washington Post, U.S. health system is showing why it's not ready for a coronavirus pandemic. We were ready. There's many more I could get to. I could, on the coronavirus specifically, I could spend the time going
The question
through these.
was about fact-checking Trump, not her talking about the media.
On the Minnesota case, does the president agree with the firings of the 4 police officers, and does he believe that they should be prosecuted?
I haven't talked to him about that specifically, but let me
right.
tell you this, that he was very upset when he saw that video. I was
Really
on Air
sad.
Force One. I don't know if it was the first time he saw it, but he certainly saw it again on Air Force One.
Right.
He was very upset by it. It was egregious, appalling, tragic, and it prompted him to pick up the phone, or the chief of staff to pick up the phone and say, we need to expedite what
Trump
was
cried.
already an FBI investigation. He wants justice to be served.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeff.
Thanks, Kayleigh. Can you give us an update on when the president plans to sign the EO on Twitter and social media? And can you also give us an update on his plans for China and Hong Kong? Is there an order coming on that as well?
So thank
That's
you
not
for the
who's
question.
talking, I
First,
don't
I would note with regard to the timing of the EO, that should be later this afternoon is what we're hoping for, hopefully before 5 p.m. But again, it could change. It's still in the works, but we are getting closer. With regard to Hong Kong, I would just say, reiterate what I said
All right, I'll
last
fix the TV,
2 days
guys.
ago, but I would also say that China's decision to impose a new national security law in Hong Kong lies in direct conflict with its international obligations under the principles of the legally binding UN-registered Sino-British Joint Declaration, and that Secretary Pompeo determined that Hong Kong does not warrant different treatment under U.S. laws because
That social media executive order is going to be rich.
autonomous from the PRC. And then anything further, I'd refer you to the State Department for now.
Just one more somewhat related. The House recently passed a bill about a minority group in China, the Uyghurs, if I said that correctly. Does the president plan to sign that? And is the White House going to treat bills, or does the White House see any concerns about bills that have been passed by proxy as not being constitutional?
So we would, first, let me say we would encourage Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats and others to come back to the Hill. It's more productive to have those members here. The Senate has convened, the House can do the same, and they can do it in person. But with regard to the Uyghurs, that's a very important question. We haven't received the bill yet, so the president hasn't been able to look through it, and I won't get ahead of him on announcing one way or the other on that, but I would note that the Trump administration continues to take actions to hold the CCP accountable for its highly repressive campaign against the Uyghurs and other religious and ethnic minorities. Paula.
Hey, Kayleigh, thank you. On vaccines, in order to achieve herd immunity, you need about 80% of people to get this vaccine.
70,
Currently,
80.
only about 50% of Americans say they'll receive it. So will the administration make the vaccine mandatory?
So the vaccine, let me just note that we're working aggressively to get one, and we
We
would
know,
like
we
to
know.
get one by the end of the year. Everything does not depend on a vaccine. Vaccine's an important component of this, but there are also therapeutics. We're seeing there's not necessarily a tie to reopening and an increase in cases, so that's encouraging. And I would refer you further to Alex Azar, who's made extensive comments on a vaccine.
A lot of
and
those things are
its
lies.
necessity.
Clear if you guys will make it mandatory, if you'll use your federal powers, how you'll use them potentially to encourage people to get this vaccine, because if you don't have herd immunity, elderly people, immunocompromised folks, they may not be able to go about their business again.
Right.
Yeah, I would have to talk to the president. I haven't talked to him about his views on making it mandatory or not, so I'd have to talk to him and get back to you on that. Yes.
They're never going to say
Thank you,
that.
Kayleigh. I wanted to ask you a question, first of all, about the comments in your statement that you made. At the conclusion of your comments, in regards to George Floyd, you said that justice will be served. Floyd, you said that justice will be served. What do you mean by that? Do you mean that those
This is a really glitchy feed. Let's just go to
I
this
realize
one.
it hasn't come out yet, and I realize we haven't seen the language, but we have seen reports. I work for Fox, and we've seen reports that it relates to the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And interestingly enough, former Vice President Joe Biden has also called for the repeal of Section 230. He says that it should be revoked immediately. But as you know, an executive order does not trump the law. An executive order can't, for instance, repeal the law. It can't in any way amend the law. So what would be the intent behind this executive order without getting ahead of what the president intends to sign?
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of that, but the one thing I will say more broadly, you referenced that section, I think that would be included in what I'm about to say. There are various shields in place that essentially shield some of these social media companies and allow them to censor conservative users, and we're not able to see what happens behind those shields. That section was one of those shields you mentioned, so we're looking at ways to remove those shields to shed some light on what is happening and some of the decision-making behind the scenes. That's generally and broadly the idea, but I won't get ahead on any specific announcements that should come hopefully before 5 p.m. John.
Kayleigh, I want to follow up on Jim's question on fact-checking and Twitter, but first a clarification. Has the president spoken to the family of George Floyd?
Not to my knowledge. If he did, without my knowledge, that could have happened, but not to my knowledge.
Do you know if he intends to, or will you get back to us on that?
I can ask him, and I can get back to you on that.
Okay. Regarding the fact-checking, I mean, the president clearly said things in these tweets that are not true. Do you not acknowledge that?
No, I don't acknowledge that.
He said, for instance, that the governor of California is sending out ballots to millions of people, anyone living in the state, no matter who they are, how they got there. That is not true. California is sending out absentee ballots to registered voters, not to anybody.
Yeah,
that's just not true.
So let me address this in detail on the issue of
just
ballots.
answer that one
And
question.
I'm going to lay out some of the president's concerns, and in that, I will get to the California
No, you
example. First, I want to note that there is a Pew study done that shows there's plenty of reason to believe that in the mass mail-in system that there is fraud. They estimated that approximately 24 million, 1 out of every 8 voters registered in the U.S. are no longer valid or are significantly inaccurate. So these are people who are on voter registrations that have not been maintained.
That applies to people who are registered to vote and vote in person. These are just people move, people. This is a crazy rebuttal.
Nevada I read about this last week, and it just really struck me as a perfect example of what the president is concerned about with mail-in ballots and the fraud that can be inherent in that. There were ballots, because Nevada mass mailed them out to voter rolls that were piling up in apartment complexes, outside of apartment complexes in Las Vegas.
Nobody's sending those in. I mean, this is crazy. The question is there evidence that significant numbers of fraudulent ballots are being cast? And the answer is no.
Said she's never seen anything like these influx of absentee ballots. All of the people had moved or died when she set out to deliver on her first delivery route. And this happened just recently. You can go read the articles from last week. She found 65 ballots of people who had moved or died. On her second carry, 100. And then as the week progressed, thousands just sitting in crates. I mean, this is extraordinary. This is not how we should be protecting U.S. ballots.
The question is there evidence that fraudulent ballots are being submitted with any regularity?
Rush transfer of mail-in voting, and this happened again recently, I think it was last week. And mail-in ballots for South Carolina turned up in Maryland. There's another example of 700 suspicious mail-in ballots in Dallas, and an individual charged with second-degree felony, illegal voting, and he's accused of visiting a woman in April to collect.
So the system worked to actually find and charge people who were doing the few instances of this. Okay, wow, all right.
There's a New Jersey example of over 3,000 ballots that were seemingly set aside. And going to California, you mentioned.
Seemingly set aside. That also is completely vague, and it could be set aside by election officials. Like, these things mean nothing.
That they reported that his office had people dropping off maybe 100 or 200 ballots at a time, and somehow in LA County 112% of LA County is registered to vote. So the problem is this: when you
That's not an issue of absentee ballots. So notice that they're mixing issues of just voter registration with issues of ballots being sent. But the question is, are fraudulent ballots being returned? And the answer is almost none are.
To everybody in the state, that is a false statement. It is not correct. will the president correct that, acknowledge that what he said is simply not true?
There's an executive order that was put into place recently by Gavin Newsom that would auto-send to voter rolls, and that would lead to what the president was suggesting.
Undocumented immigrants aren't on voter rolls. She's an idiot.
It's not to everybody, it's to registered voters.
Yeah, to everyone, including dead people on the voter rolls, including to the mysterious 112% in LA County.
Wow.
That's not just everyone.
You
That's
have
everyone.
to be really dumb to fall for this, which is why it's perfect for Trump supporters.
He is very concerned about the security of our elections, but when it comes to mail-in ballots, all of a sudden, the concern for election security just melts away.
But Kayleigh, you yourself
Yes.
have voted by mail.
Thank you very much.
Brian.
Research on mail-in ballots, research has shown that, one, it doesn't benefit either party, it increases voter participation, secretaries of state of both parties are still pursuing it, and fraud is not widespread. And so why is the president continuing to tweet about this and to give the impression that there's widespread fraud in the use of mail-in ballots when he himself used a mail-in ballot?
And so did
The big
she.
question is, some are concerned that the president may be laying the groundwork to cast doubt on the election. Is that what he's doing by bringing this up?
Well, I appreciate you bringing up this question and specifically the component about the president using mail-in ballots. There's an important distinction, and I think it's lost upon a lot of people, but it's important to make, is that the president is okay with mail-in voting so long as you have a reason. He's not okay with mass mail-in voting.
Texas judge said fear of catching coronavirus is a valid reason to vote absentee.
That are subject to fraud. That is the case. I listed off for you, I think 3 of the 5 examples I gave you were from just this week and last week. So this does happen. And
research has shown, Stanford University did a research study that showed that there wasn't widespread fraud in these vote by mail, and that it didn't benefit either party and increased voter participation. So why would the president be against that?
yeah, it is subject to both parties. This can hurt both parties. I would note that a bipartisan commission, led in part by President Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, concluded that mail-in ballots, quote, remain the largest source of potential voter fraud. So moving the entire country to that system doesn't make sense, and doing so in a hurried fashion ahead of November. Just go look at the Democrat Iowa caucus and
We
how
have
it worked
6
out when they
months
tried
to
to
do
move
it.
to a
It's
new
not
system.
They're trying to
And
lay
then
groundwork
finally-
to cast doubt on the results of the election. in November.
Finally,
Is he
I-
laying groundwork to try to cast doubt on the results?
No, he's certainly not doing that. And I would finally note there's an additional concern that was very well laid out by the Wall Street Journal editor.
She's going to have to bail out.
2016, minorities and first-time voters were more likely to have mail-in ballots thrown out. So that is another troubling concern. In fact, 319,000 of those total votes were rejected. Yes.
Thank you. Back in November, President Trump went up to Walter.
Trump's concern is not enough minorities will vote.
When does he plan to complete phase 2 and release the results to the public?
Yeah, I don't have an update on the physical, but because you asked that, I'll specifically inquire about that today and try to get
Plan
back
to
to
do
you.
it?
You what?
Plan to do it?
Yes, he does. Yes.
So Trump supposedly got a jump on his 2020 physical in 2019. We're halfway through the year almost, and no updates on when the physical is actually going to happen.
What he's feeling about, is he feeling better, what's his feedback about that?
I did, and thank you. I know that you emailed me a question to that effect, and I didn't have time to follow up with you via email, but because I saw that, I went into him just before coming out here, and I asked him that, and he said, quote, he's feeling perfect, quote, he's feeling absolutely great after taking this regimen, and quote, he would take it again if he thought that he was exposed. So he is feeling
Trump
very
liked
good.
the hydroxy so much he wants another round.
Point, folks, there's a very, very well done piece. It's very thorough with a lot of medical experts laying out about prophylaxis use of hydroxychloroquine by Tina Hessman-Secy at sciencenews.org. It's very well done. She talks about the nearly 200 clinical trials around the world, including 28 involving healthcare workers. In fact, at Henry Ford Hospital in Michigan, 3,000 healthcare
Yep,
workers.
give him another round of the hydroxy, put some insulin into his breakfast, and then make sure that he's also washing with Lysol, washing his teeth with Lysol, that is.
Number of Indian Americans doctors have been writing, I have seen some of those letters, they are supporting President taking hydroxychloroquine, some of them have themselves taking it. Have you seen those too?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot. It's not specific to the president, these doctors, but they just talk in general about what they've seen. For instance, Sarah Lofgren, an infectious disease doctor at the University of Minnesota Medical School in Minneapolis.
Yeah, whoever.
They're testing hydroxychloroquine there to prevent COVID-19. And she said when used alone, we're not seeing major issues out of the thousands of patients. We're not seeing things that some people are concerned about. And I would just note that it's important, of course, always, if taking hydroxychloroquine, get a prescription from your doctor.
Right.
Doctors are the ones that need to be prescribing this.
Yeah, well, it's not over the
That being
counter,
said, I
so.
think that some of the hyperbole around this drug that has been on the market for 65 years, been approved for use in 3 other maladies, and has been approved for off-label use, when there's a lot of hyperbole about this being unsafe, some of the things I've seen reported out there, there are consequences deterring people from being recruited into actual clinical trials. I have some quotes from a New York epidemiologist and others conducting trials saying they're having trouble recruiting people because some of the myths that are out there. So it's important to note that this drug has been safely used by millions of people for a long time.
One more on China.
Yes.
President yesterday tweeted about he wants to mediate between India and China on the border dispute. China has been behaving very aggressively with its neighbors in the last few weeks, in particular in South China Sea, you must have seen on the Indian border side. What's the message President has to these countries?
Yeah, I'd refer you back to the president's tweet on that one.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, Christian.
Thanks, Kayleigh. We saw reports that before swearing in John Ratcliffe as DNI, Rick Grinnell declassified a trove of documents related to the Russia investigation. The president hinted that those could be made public sometime soon. Does the director plan on doing that anytime in the near future?
Yeah, so those, I believe, are under a process of review by the DOJ, so I'll refer to them on that. Yes. Tom, do you have a question? I thought I saw you had your hand
Nope,
raised.
Tom's
No?
good.
Kayleigh.
Kayleigh?
Yeah, back there.
Yes, hi. Thank you. I want to ask you about Russia's recent actions in Libya. The U.S. AFRICOM has been issuing statements recently about U.S. actions there, and in their statements, they're saying that Russia is clearly trying to tip the scales in its favor in Libya, just like it did in Syria, by deploying military aircraft likely to provide close air support and offensive fires for the Wagner group that is supporting Libya's LNA fight against the internationally recognized government. What's the White House position on this? And do you agree with the U.S. AFRICOM assessment that their actions, the Russian actions in Libya, are destabilizing the region?
Yeah, we encourage de-escalation in Libya, and for more, I'd refer you to the DOD. Janelle?
Thank you, Kayleigh. If Joe Scarborough were innocent, couldn't he sue the president for defamation? And then, in turn, couldn't President Trump's attorneys immediately depose Joe Scarborough and allow him to go on under oath and explain how this 28-year-old woman was found dead by his desk with multiple skull fractures? Would the president welcome a defamation suit from Joe Scarborough?
So on that, I would just refer you back to some of my previous comments that the audio on the Don Imus show was very disturbing, where there was a lot of laughing and joking about this matter. That certainly is not a laughing and joking matter.
Do you think that Scarborough has grounds to do so?
So I have no further comments other than to just point back to the Don Imus audio. Who hasn't? Yes. Do you have a question? Yeah.
When were the states first notified that they would have to take the lead in COVID-19 testing? I know the CDC was working on it early on, January, February, there was a problem with the test. When were the states told, hey, you have to prepare and take the lead here in testing your population?
So I don't have a precise date for you, but I know the way the process went, where the states came up with the plans that they thought they would need to have adequate testing in order to reopen. Those plans were given to us, and Admiral Joie meticulously went through all of those plans, ensured that we had enough supply to shore up those plans that states had, and to make sure that states had enough to safely reopen. So that was how the process went, and the president has done really extraordinary work with testing, 300 to 400,000 tests per day.
So he just wanted a date. What was the date at which the states were told testing is on you? All of this stuff is immaterial.
World in testing numbers, and under 10% positivity is at least the barometer given by the WHO as what's necessary. And nationally, we're at under 10% positivity. In fact, we're at 7.5% positivity rate. So we are doing quite well on testing. Is there anyone who hasn't gotten a question? Because right there.
Yeah, thank you. Has the president heard from his counterparts regarding the G7 summit? Is it actually going to take place in June at the White House?
We do aim for it to take place then. It's gotten positive reception. I inquired about this 2 days ago and was told it's getting very positive reception from world leaders. So we do intend for that to take place here.
You have a date in mind?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. You yourself have been able to vote by mail several times.
She has a page.
Do you think anyone with health concerns, who has health concerns about going to the polls, should have that same convenience, that right?
So what I would note again is the distinction between absentee voting and having a reason and mass mail-out voting where ballots are sent
Question is,
in a
she
widespread
did it 10
fashion to
times.
people who are dead but on voting rolls.
And if someone's
those
afraid of
ballots
getting
end up in trash
coronavirus,
cans.
is that a valid
That's
reason?
a state-by-state consideration. I'll leave it to states to determine what is a valid reason. But there are, if you're an elderly person
So
who's
doing
unable
this
to
out
get
of
to...
health considerations for a lot of their residents. And if they want to pursue that track, is there anything wrong with that?
Again, I mean, you're asking, I assume you're asking with relation to the pandemic that's
Yes.
going on. None of us know where we're going to be in November. I'd first note that. We don't have a crystal ball. But what I would say is that there are real concerns when you don't do in-person voting. And South Carolina is a great example where
No, it's not.
Democrats literally sued to force rushed mail-in voting. And what happened? You had
Terrible
ballots from
example.
South Carolina ending up in Baltimore. That is not a tenable system.
Kayleigh McEnany is someone who deserves to have her career destroyed by lying in this brazen way. She will probably be rewarded with either a consultant Cushy gig or some permanent cable news gig, but she actually deserves never to work again.
They're doing so safely, and I think there's a way to continue our great civic duty of showing up and voting in a way that is safe. In the same way it's safe to eat at a restaurant, it's safe to go to a beach, we can vote in a safe fashion, and I think that's something
not
that
safe
is
to go to
good and to be
restaurants in a lot of
celebrated
places.
as we head to November. All right, I think I took everyone's question. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. I'm out of here. See you later. Wow, just weaponized dishonesty. Weaponized dishonesty. Really, really crazy stuff. Hey, guys, remember that for the next 12 hours, our Memorial Day membership coupon code is still live and hot at joinpacman.com. The coupon code is Memorial20. That code up above my head is still valid, but there's an extra special coupon code, Memorial20, which is essentially a secret because it's too big of a discount. And you can use it to grab a membership at joinpacman.com. That's the best way to support these streams. And everybody will get a thank you. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the degree to which these press briefings present just lies and a total lack of answers is stunning. A few people pointed out, what did people point out? Luke said Trump, Obama was bad because of executive orders. Also Trump throwing executive orders at social media companies when they hurt his feelings. Yeah, the social media censorship thing is crazy. We won't know more about it until we know what the full text of it is, so we'll have to see. David Gardner saying he's going to have to wash his eyes and ears with bleach thanks to this press briefing. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. Sarah Baggett says Kayleigh is only Kellyanne after she slipped her lizard person into a fresh human bodysuit. Yeah, good one. Take Dressler says hilarious that her argument is essentially, well, you guys lied too. The same defense a toddler would use if they and a sibling got caught in the act. Yes, every time that Kayleigh McEnany is asked to account for a lie Donald Trump has told, she will say, people in media in the past have also told lies. Well, they're not the president, and they issue corrections, some of them. Donald Trump has never said, you know what, guys? I was wrong. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I made a commitment to be transparent and to tell you the truth while the entire set being broken down. Trump has never taken responsibility for anything, ever, 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 ever. And it's telling that she just says, but you guys have also told lies before. Okay, and how does that have to do with the president lying straight up every single day? Who else? Oh, TJ said, what would 45's presidency be like without Twitter? I hate to say it. I don't know that Trump would have a presidency if it weren't in great part for Twitter. Thank you to Samuel Rule, who is new member number 3 today at joinpacman.com. Also, Henry Sadler is new member number 4 at joinpacman.com. Kyle Petricelli is new member number 5 today at joinpacman.com. I hope that I pronounced that correctly. Joseph Vanskoy says, drinking game, take a shot every time she says, I refer you to. Yeah, if you're taking more than a sip every time she says that, you would be very drunk after her 20-minute press briefings. Chris K pointing out, thanks, it needed to be said about her career. Yeah, you know, one of the most toxic things about these weaponized lying positions is the Trumpists love her, and she will almost certainly be hugely rewarded and will get a really cushy gig when this is all said and done. And that is absolutely horrifying. Let me say thanks to a couple people on Twitch. Stefan Rowe has subscribed with Prime. Neptune has subscribed. Aaron Nance has subscribed and says, love the show, David. Do you think this voter fraud BS is the start of Trump claiming he won after he loses in November? Yes. Also, when will you start taking hydroxychloroquine? Yeah, very, very soon. Thanks to The Freak and Oak84, who have also subscribed. And a very big thank you also to Will Andrews, who's new member number 6 today, and Eric Espinoza, who is new member number 7, as they turn the lights off literally and figuratively on another lie-riddled McEnany press briefing. I bid you farewell. Don't miss my interview with Ro Khanna, publishing later today to YouTube. Thanks for joining me. Back very soon.